This week, we continue our deep dive into Tsuruhiko Kiuchi, a time traveler who might be the only person in history to have ever pulled a hat trick on the Grim Reaper. I didn't see you there.
It all started early this morning.
From hunting ghosts to Bigfoot, UFOs,
Cryptids, true crime, paranormal, and more.
I've always wanted to see a UFO.
Oh, I was researching for your entertainment.
That's Bigfoot's cat.
He basically wrote the book on modern cult.
We aren't really comedians.
What if Buddha did cocaine?
The Addams Family on meth. This is the Black Cat Report.
See you on the other side. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 106 of the Black Cat Report. My name is Gil, and joining me here today is the only man to have ever correctly predicted the outcome of Culpeper, Virginia's annual squirrel boat races 6 years in a row. Joey.
Thank you. That's correct. Also, Culpeper did paralyze Superman. So I don't know if most people know that, but it paralyzed Christopher Reeves. My hometown was the place that Christopher Reeves was paralyzed on a horseback.
It's horrible.
And you gave me a platform by introducing me. So I'm going to go ahead and just let it go. So thank you all for listening out there, and we're excited.
Yes. Now, we got a lot of news, but we're going to freaking skip it. Sans one exception. Joey, take it away.
We want to thank our Patreon listeners, because this is the first time that we are actually live. For our tiered subscription people, the sexiest producer and our research assistant, you can watch me and Gil record our episodes live. And we want to thank you for our first sexiest producer, Copy Kitty. We thank you so much.
Thank you, Copy Kitty. Now, let's dive back in to the wildly true story, Tsuruhiko Kiuchi, Part 2. In 1964, when Kiuchi was still just a wide-eyed fifth grader, he happened across a book that would go on to change the trajectory of his life. The book was about space, and 10-year-old Kiuchi was quickly consumed by the facts and theories he was learning about in the vast, expanding universe, the Big Bang, and the endless varieties of planets stretching into the far reaches of science and imagination. But within the starlit backdrop of this youthful budding passion bloomed a single burning infatuation. You see, the same children's book that moved him to start looking up at night also designed Kiuchi's fate in the form of one simple fact. He read that if you're the first person to discover a comet, it gets named after you. And this idea, this one little detail, immediately left Kiuchi obsessed with becoming a comet hunter, making new discoveries, and ultimately having his name forever tied to one of these mysterious cosmic travelers. It's a pretty dope fact to learn as a little kid and be like, holy shit, something up there could be named after me, you know?
Yeah, I was today years old when I figured that out. So when I figured that out.
It's pretty dope.
Yeah, that's
pretty
dope.
Awesome. Well, while fads and obsessions can often be an hourly cycle for children, his young love wasn't a temporary fling. His passion, coupled with the persistence only a 10-year-old could manifest, gradually won over everyone's hearts and minds at school until finally the day came that his homeroom teacher and entire fifth grade class all pulled together some money and took a field trip into town where they purchased a telescope for their school.
Cool.
Soon, an astronomy club was born, and every day, when the last school bell rang, Kiuchi was always the first one waiting at the club's door to get in. And surprisingly, this childhood fascination with the heavens is what ultimately led him to joining Japan's Self-Defense Air Force with the hopes of becoming a pilot, which we know from Part 1 panned out in the most horrific way possible.
Yes.
But in the 2 years leading up to the night of his fatigue-induced fatal spiral on the floor in the corner of the control tower, Kiuchi was already on the path to building his legend. You see, once upon a time, there was this thing that was invented in the late 60s by the U.S. military called ARPANET, which stands for the Advanced Research Projects Agency Network. Joey, do you know what ARPANET is?
No, I want you to tell me, please.
Awesome. Well, ARPANET led to maybe one of the most significant developments in modern human history, because ARPANET was an interconnected reporting, communications, and data sharing system that, when finally released to the public, evolved to become what we now know as the internet.
That's cool.
That shit already existed in the 60s.
That makes sense.
I had no fucking clue.
I would say that I wouldn't know that either, but that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So think about how it made it much easier for us to go to the moon.
It's true, but think about what computers were in the 60s.
There were huge rooms. Basically was one, like, processing power of our phone. So, yeah.
Think about the communication infrastructure in the 60s.
Yeah. It was basically this one big Excel sheet.
More or less, yeah. But I could see the late 70s, early 80s, but when I actually started digging into this, I was like, when did this actually... Holy shit. It was in like the early to mid 60s. ARPANET was already up and running.
Yeah.
In parts of the... Not just, and that's the thing, not just in the United States, but it was starting to be set up and connected from the United States to allies internationally. That's fucking nuts.
Yeah.
Well, here's the deal. Allegedly, young Kiuchi, who had been trained in its use in order to report and communicate flights while working as a traffic control tower operator, he may have played a small role in liberating the internet. After seeing what ARPANET was capable of, Kiuchi became fascinated by its potential, and at some point around 1975, about a year before his near-death experience in 76, he found himself at what would now be described as an early tech forum where some of the smartest minds in the world were discussing computers and their potential. And in that room was the co-founder of a brand new business, which at the time was less than a year old. His name was Bill Gates. And while Kiuchi sat there listening to him speak, he was absolutely astonished by the drive and determination of this young American who visited Japan to speak about computers.
Wow.
And it was during these talks that Kiuchi spoke up, saying that ARPANET should be connected to the computers that Gates and his team were trying to build for the public. Almost as soon as those words came out, his idea was shot down by U.S. military representatives present, who quickly stated that that was way the hell too risky and not practical at all.
That's truth that they would do that, because that's also in their nature to shoot down stuff, military representatives. So
yeah,
Bill Gates was literally putting up gates for people to not... Come on, Gil.
But I had no clue that, like, I think it was Microsoft was started in 1974.
That's crazy.
I had no clue. Like, if you look at time, like, there's not a lot of articles that reference it, actually. It was kind of a pain. I kept finding stuff from the 80s and early 90s.
Yeah.
But no. If you trace it all the way back, it was started a year before this. There is a high likelihood that this story might be real. Because at the time, Gates was building personal computers. He wasn't, this was decades before the internet was even conceived of. He was just building them as personal computation devices. That was it.
Yeah.
Kiuchi was there.
So
he was familiar with these systems because the Air Force, like the air base that he worked at, was super important. He was trained in this shit. And so him speaking up was like, that might have fucking happened.
Yeah, true. Thinking about that, though, so Al Gore, not the creator of the internet.
No.
Kiuchi, creator of the internet.
I mean, I'm just glad someone's saying it.
You know, somebody's got it.
Well, here's the deal. Within those same 2 years of service, Kiuchi had another brush with history. But this time, it was due to a direct command when, at some point around 1975 or early 1976, he was ordered by the Japanese military to not approve of any flights within Japan's airspace after 10 p.m. for an entire week. this was a nationwide order. And it was during this quiet time that civilian reports of UFOs skyrocketed. And it was also when Kiuchi saw his first flying saucer.
Now that had UFOs.
Now, when looking back now at how no reasons were given and everything was hush-hush, it seems obvious to Kiuchi that the government was actively tracking and hunting these unknown crafts, just based off of the radar of military aircraft that was flying around at the time, correlated with reports of strange objects that were 100% not airplanes or jets in the sky.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because when all of that traffic in the sky goes down to zero, it becomes really obvious what doesn't belong there.
Yeah.
Now, I know that sounds like maybe about as much of a stretch as Kiuchi helping to liberate the internet, but Joey, do you remember what was going on close around that same time, in that same area? Take that as a no. It was, in fact, the 15-year-long Darwin UFO flap, which we covered in episodes 60 and 61. The timing, the descriptions, and geographic region all pretty much match up.
Huh. In Australia, mate.
Yes, in Australia, but we're also talking about UFOs. I mean,
yeah, for sure. I mean,
technically, Lumberton was happening at this exact same time, but on the opposite end of the planet. Technically, it could have been there, but it seemed like that little triangle was really just wanting to hang out just in Lumberton for that week.
Yeah.
But no, the actual large lights, the large spheres, the large objects, and their erratic movement and everything matched up almost exactly with what the fuck was happening in Japan. And at the same time that this massive order came down, which shut down all flights coming in, out of, and over Japan every single day of an entire week after 10 p.m. until it was 5 in the morning or some crazy time. It was that's a lot of commerce and travel that's just shut down.
Crazy. I mean, we think of it now as the last 3 days with the Microsoft error and it stopped most planes and stuff, how bad that's been. That's purposefully shut down for a week.
Yeah.
Damn.
So a little bit more backstory about why Kiuchi's job might have been extra stressful.
Yeah.
Well, as we know from part 1, the stress of working in air traffic control for the JSDF led to one of the most terrible nights imaginable. And ultimately, after getting to a real hospital the next day, he was given 7 days to live. But those 7 days were not just limited to his body slowly deteriorating. Kiuchi's mind, though foggy and wrapped with pain, was still occupied by the thoughts of a dying man, like anybody in that situation would have. As he laid there, waiting to pass, he worked through his beliefs. He knew from his love of astronomy that before the Big Bang, there was nothing. Just complete nothingness, which at the time, being, barely more than a living mummy, sounded like pure relief, a pleasant return to a painless, empty nothingness. Literally, nothing sounded better to him than his active experience, his current life, right?
For sure.
So when the time finally came and he found himself led to his family in the afterlife, then later through space and time by just his own thoughts, well, we'll just say that this all added up to a major reevaluation of his beliefs once he made it through and came out alive on the other side of surgery and subsequent recovery. Well, not really knowing what to make of anything that happened, but remembering most of it, Kiuchi quickly took to following up on the experiments that he'd conducted while dead. Keep in mind, he wasn't just bouncing in and out of people's bodies to prank them, but to set up potential proof later on, the fact that his journey really did take place. That was kind of his thinking at the time.
Yeah, for sure.
And while his mother and sisters couldn't recall hearing his reassuring screams, his father, on the other hand, who was in the room when Kiuchi first came back, recalled hearing his son's voice saying, "I'll be okay." But it's important to note here that this experience was then immediately followed up by the start of an intense, multi-day-long headache. So, that said, what about his other shenanigans? Well, after being released from the hospital, Kiuchi soon made the 4.5-hour-long drive to Kometown, Japan. Along with just simply wanting to reconnect with his old hometown friends. Again, he had just died and was kind of going over values in life. He also wanted to follow up with his gas station experiment. But unfortunately for big city Kiuchi, he was only able to confirm his out-of-body experience when, shortly after arriving in town, he ran into the friend who he'd temporarily possessed and found out pretty quick they were, in fact, still pissed at him.
That makes sense, yeah.
Saying something along the lines of, "How come you didn't stop and say hi when you were driving past here?" To which Kiuchi replied, "Driving past here? When?" To which his friend replied, "On April 10th, when all of our friends were in town visiting and we saw you drive by the gas station and we ran out and tried to say hello, and then you just drove by us." Well, by that point in the conversation, Kiuchi began trying his best to come clean and explain what really happened. That he had, in fact, been hundreds of miles away in a hospital and had been dead at the time they saw him. But for some reason, after telling him all that, his friend had a hard time trusting him.
I mean, yeah.
I don't know why.
He was like, "Man, you're dead right."
Where's the...
Yes. I strive for crickets. I strive for crickets.
Ah, yes, the applause of crickets.
Hey, crickets can applaud, with they're just applauding with their legs.
No. But for some reason, after telling him all that, his friend had a hard time trusting him. In fact, the more Kiuchi tried to confess to what had really taken place, the less his friend started to doubt that Kiuchi had really possessed him, and the more he started to look at Kiuchi with a deeper anger and suspicion.
For sure.
You see, in the immediate aftermath of Kiuchi's experiment, all of the young men present at the gas station were stricken with intense headaches that ultimately led to them spending multiple days bedridden. In the end, the guy never trusted Kiuchi again, saying after what had happened, he wasn't going to ever be able to be sure if Kiuchi was brainwashing him or not. Like, he was just like, "I can't trust you anymore, man. What the fuck? Like, yeah. I believe that happened because I have to, because there's proof, because yada yada, but like, why the fuck would you violate me like that, man?"
Yeah, he's trying to prove something to him, but like, that is kind of he could have just done it to, if he didn't inherit the guy's body, I guess he wouldn't been able to do it, right? He wouldn't, if he didn't inherit the guy's body. So, yeah, I guess that definitely is a violation.
Big city Kiuchi.
BCK.
BCK.
He is really fucking up right now. He's like, "Hey, I'm going to try to do something cool." But really, this guy was dead. Like, it's funny to think about. The guy's pissed that he did this, and he's like, "But dude, I was dead. Like, I was dead. Like, I died." Yeah. And this is, you're pissed. I took my time after I died and got out of the hospital to come visit you.
I've heard a lot of weird arguments at gas stations, I'll be honest.
Oh, yeah. Hot spots especially.
I wish I could have been there for this weird-ass argument that I'm sure was a yelling match at the gas station. "I get it. You died. But why did you possess my body and make me think that you were in a car so that I just ran up on a stranger?" It's like, dude, I was trying to prove that time travel was real. No, that's not okay to do.
None of this is okay.
You're just like slowly putting your gas in your car, just being like, "Do I put more money in your M? Like, I was only planning on putting a buck in, right?
Can I just pay for my Funyuns?"
Bro, what if I crawled inside of you and tricked you and all your friends into seeing me? It's like, bro, it wasn't like that. I was dead.
I was dead, okay? Like, this doesn't matter.
You always say that.
You're always dead.
You know what? This is why they all call you Big City Kiuchi. This is why. Coming down here with your big city ideas. But you've changed into me. But then back into you, and it's fucking weird.
I don't get it.
We're simple out here. We don't do that. Oh my God. Now, near-death experiences, as a rule, tend to dramatically change a person, and Kiuchi was no exception to this. From how he viewed his place in the universe to his personal goals and the meaning of life itself. After what he had been through and subsequently proven to himself as having been real, it was understandably impossible to fall back to being an atheist or wasting his life as an overburdened control tower operator. But with all of that said, he wasn't immediately embracing his near-death afterlife or time travel experiences either. You see, after his follow-ups turned into fallout with his friends, Kiuchi decided he wasn't going to make a point to push his story publicly and tell the world. And while he did do medical interviews and everything was documented, the truth is Kiuchi felt embarrassed, and so for the next 20 or so years, he mostly kept it all to himself and decided to completely give up on his old life, opting instead to take his childhood passion for comet hunting more seriously. And so, shortly after being discharged from the Japanese self-defense forces due to obvious medical reasons, he ordered a custom-made set of high-powered binoculars, but these binoculars are most likely not what you would typically picture, right? These things weighed over 65 pounds, and they had to be coupled with a steel stand to be held up. But this was genius, though, because they afforded a broader view of the night sky that could be adjusted quicker than a typical telescope. These were like insane, like 2.5 foot long binoculars that required a stand where Kiuchi stood straight up and like use them to look at the. It's kind of a genius move when you're hunting something like comets that are obviously moving.
It's
in the sky, right?
I picture it as something very comical. It's just these huge fucking things. Yeah, kind of very comical. This guy just sitting there with these like huge thing like this big. It's kind of like looking like this, and you're just like, what the fuck is he doing? Very Roger Rabbit.
And like, you know, if you were in a helicopter, plane, or UFO flying by and you look down, it was just like Looney Tunes style giant eyes looking.
Yeah, it's like, we're not going over there.
But yeah, so what was that? The night sky could be adjusted quicker than typical telescope. And by the early 1990s, when Kiuchi was just in his late 30s, he was able to finally make his childhood dreams come true, not once, but twice, when he discovered 2 comets that now bear his name. But there's more to this. You see, Kiuchi, who, if you Google his full name, is world-renowned as an amateur astronomer. He became famous not just because of the 2 comets, but because he continued on to make massive contributions to astronomy. So much so that his fellow peers in the community have added his name to their own comet discoveries as a way to give honor to his decades of achievement within the field.
Wow.
But one of his discoveries stands out above all the rest. It was in 1992 when Kiuchi rediscovered a comet after it had been lost for the previous 130 years. Now, why is that such a big deal? Well, this comet, which had been meticulously recorded and constantly tracked by astronomers since 69 BC, is famous within the astronomy community. The comet's name is Swift-Tuttle, a comet you might know as the host body for the Perseus meteor shower, which happens every year between July and August, this year peaking around August 14th. Or, if not from that, then maybe you'll remember it from some of its more famous roles in Hollywood, like when it played as the inspiration for the main character in movies like Armageddon and Deep Impact. You see, besides bringing Aerosmith out of retirement and killing Bruce Willis, the reason Swift-Tuttle has been tracked through all of recorded history is because when its orbit swings the comet near Earth every 133 years, anyone looking up at the night sky will see it And furthermore, the view gets a little bit bigger every time it passes.
Perfect.
At 16 miles wide, Swift-Tuttle is more than twice the estimated size of whatever hit Earth and turned all the dinosaurs into chicken nuggies. Swift-Tuttle is quite literally the number one known space threat to all life on Earth. And in almost exactly 101 years from us recording this episode, sometime between July and August 2125, Swift-Tuttle will be swinging by to say hello as it comes within 14,229,400 miles of the Earth, which sounds far, till you realize that's only 59 and a half times farther away than the moon. And those numbers, which are just guesstimates, are based on the most optimistic estimates. As it stands right now, there is in fact a large portion of the astronomy community estimating Swift-Tuttle will be coming way closer than that to Earth, with a number of well-respected models predicting either the moon or the Earth will be taking a direct hit, or, if God puts Kobe in the game, it might narrowly pass between the Earth and moon. Let's stop and think about this for a second. This comet, which is guaranteed to swing by us and not guaranteed to not hit us in 101 years, might wipe out all life as we know it.
Cool.
Kiuchi found it.
Good. Thank you, Kiuchi. What a hero. Seriously.
This is I have the links to the Wired articles at the time and all sorts of other shit.
Damn.
He did this, right? Well,
it was the binoculars.
Yes. Either way, when Kiuchi rediscovered Swift-Tuttle, he also estimated a new return date and how close it would get to Earth. His estimates were then checked and validated by other astronomers at the time, and this news soon reached the inboxes labeled "oh shit" on the desks of world leaders. And because of this, because of Kiuchi's rediscovery, world governments have been actively working on how to deal with Swift-Tuttle, with most of them concluding we should all collectively fuck up its orbit by nuking it.
Yep.
Which, if you remember, was literally the plot to Armageddon that was released in 1998, which came out in theaters only a few years after world governments publicly acknowledged the threat of Swift-Tuttle and began sharing their active plans to deal with it.
Yes. Pretty much the government was like, Swift-Tuttle, you're about to get a swift rebuttal.
Hell yeah. That was good. No crooked applause on that. Now, why the hell did I tell you all that? Well, most importantly, your grandkids will be there for Aerosmith's next reunion tour, but also because this means it's not too far of a stretch to say that Kiuchi may have already helped save all life on Earth in the future. That is not as far stretched to me.
Nope.
So, if you're keeping score at home, Kiuchi may have inspired Bill Gates and helped to liberate the internet while also assisting in a massive UFO hunting operation. He then died from one of the rarest syndromes in history, came back from the dead after he traveled through space and time and possessed somebody's body, then proved he actually did all of that, then went on to discover 2 comets, as well as potentially helping to save all life on Earth while also inspiring multiple Hollywood blockbusters. This dude's life story is a goddamn iceberg of incredible events. And dear Lord, it doesn't end there. Because not too long after his rediscovery of Swift-Tuttle, Kiuchi was invited by multiple organizations to speak at their events, where he was put up in front of crowds of scientists and experts, including one such event when he was 40, where he was the keynote speaker in a large tatami room. It was the same room he had already described as having seen himself speaking in when he traveled to his own future during his death when he was 22 years old. Dear God, that was a confusing sentence to write.
Good God, that's a confusing sentence to listen to.
Do you remember from part 1 where he traveled to when he was 40 years old, and it kind of really just like pushed him over the edge, like, I'm going to be good, I'm going to be healthy.
Yeah.
Why am I speaking to a bunch of people that are like, paying so much attention to me and shit? Because at the time, he was just a 22-year-old, like, enlisted, service member that was dying of a horrible disease, and like nobody fucking listened to him for shit.
Yeah.
And then at 40, he's like, whoa, all these people are paying attention to me, and I'm in this like beautiful fucking like room, and I'm making all these official speeches and yada yada. This is fucking nuts. And he said that when he was young, and he came out and originally started talking to like his family and the doctors before having the bad experience with his friends and being like, okay, I'm not talking about this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
He called it.
Damn.
He had no way at the time of knowing that he was going to discover something that would quite literally influence international nuclear policy on saving us from space. Like, he couldn't have called that. He could have tried to make himself important in some other way, but like, how the fuck could he have, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's...
Yeah. A bunch of scientists and, military officials and stuff like that. That's hard to predict.
People were real into him after he rediscovered something that had been missing that everybody knew eventually would completely wipe out all life on Earth.
Yeah.
Well, between seeing his future play out just as he said it would and gaining legitimate notoriety for his accomplishments, Kiuchi found himself more open to sharing what led him to these moments, and he began to write. By 1995, he had authored and released his first book, The Memory of the Space, which became an instant bestseller. 8 years later, he'd return to writing and release his second book, The Starry Heavens Teach Our Way of Living. These are obviously translated from Japanese.
Yeah.
Which, that book was dedicated to how he sees the role of humans on this planet and the concept that he's developed after 27 years of quietly reflecting on his experiences. Was the concepts that he developed about time, death, teleportation, and time travel. Topics that surely, occupied his mind every single night as he stood outside from sunset to sunrise, staring up into space and not talking really to anybody about what had happened.
If he was a time traveler, what if he just like kept writing the book and then like going back in time because that time he wrote it, it didn't become a bestseller? He's like, fuck, gotta go back in time again. He like changed like the title a little bit.
He's just like reading reviews like, damn, I should have included that going back.
Yeah, and goes back and fixes it, and he's like, perfect book.
Funny you should mention that. Well, much like his first book, his second work took off and became a bestseller almost immediately. And even to this day, I just checked at the time of this recording, 20 years after it was released, the original Japanese language version is still getting reviews monthly, and it boasts a 4.5-star rating with 977 reviews on Amazon.
Damn.
In terms of accomplishments, that is absolutely huge for an author, let alone when the reach is so limited by language demographics. This is just printed in the original like Japanese. That's not a huge language region.
No.
Like, he's almost up to 1,000, and if you look through the reviews, it's like every 2 weeks going back for years and years and years. Like, people are still buying this.
He's just literally showing up in random people's houses and time traveling, dropping a book off, and then traveling back in time. Yeah.
No, but I did translate the reviews and stuff, all incredibly positive. I think the only, 4.5-star reviews that I was seeing was, I wish he would have focused more on the afterlife and less about space and comets. Because he mixed in his views of life and everything like that. And a lot of folks were just kind of like, this was incredible. I wish there's more. Like, it was just all overwhelming. A lot of folks were like, hey, after so-and-so died, this gave me relief. This made me feel better. Like, it was, it really hit the hearts of a lot of people.
Yeah. Did you read that 0-star review?
There was no 0-star review.
No, you missed it. It was some guy saying, man, he went into my body and confused me. I hate this book.
fuck you, big city Kiuchi.
It's very weird.
Signed, Craig's gas station. But with all that said, there's going to be a dramatic inspiration for his third book, which is why we're going to hop ahead 6 years to 2009 when Kiuchi found himself in charge leading a tour to and from Shanghai, China, where he had brought around 600 astronomy enthusiasts from Japan to watch a total solar eclipse.
Dang.
Well, after arriving and scouting out where they would all gather to view the event, bad news soon settled in. The skies were overcast, and there was more or less a guaranteed chance that there would be severe thunderstorms at the time of the eclipse. Now, I gotta add something in here I didn't write down. Originally, because Kiuchi was partnered up, again, he's a famous astronomer, right? And actually, I gotta bring this up. Culturally in Japan, comet hunting is actually like a really big pastime. It's a really big hobby for folks in Japan. Like literally, they just get called hunters, and it just gets referred to as hunting. Like it's almost like calling somebody a fisher or a fisherman or whatever. You just know what the hell that's short for.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a super big thing in Japan. So he was kind of like a mild celebrity, coupled with the fact that he had also not just maybe helped save all life on Earth, right? But also had this insane, near-death experience and stuff. So he could draw numbers. But at the time, when he first agreed to help lead this tour, there was only supposed to be 30 people. And the program that he connected to kind of bumped up the numbers a little bit without him knowing.
Just a little.
So then now he was leading 600 people.
That is ridiculous. That's way too many. Had to get a megaphone.
Dude, I have to possess everybody and convince them to sing it. The skies were overcast, and there was more or less a guarantee of severe thunderstorms at the time of the eclipse. Being the head of the tour and the main person who planned it, these prospects began to get to Kiuchi and led to debilitating anxiety and stress. But, to everyone's surprise and relief, when the time came for the crowds to watch the cosmic alignment, the skies opened up. Nice. And everyone had a perfect view. It was a success. But the damage to the now 55-year-old Kiuchi had already been done. He went back to his hotel room early that night with complaints of severe abdominal cramps.
Not again.
The next morning, after struggling to get out of bed, Kiuchi, still in pain, headed downstairs for breakfast. At which point, upon reaching the lobby, he immediately turned around and got back into the elevator to head up to his room. He was just like, nope, I'm in too much pain. I'm out.
Yeah.
Soon enough, the doors would be opening up to the horror of some of his tour members as they saw Kiuchi lying in a pool of blood on the elevator floor.
Yeah.
You can feel safe at this point, assuming that it was pretty much the exact situation to what happened to him in part 1 of the series. It was the whole fucking process starting over again.
Yeah.
Anyways, this time he wasn't rushed to a baby doctor, but quickly loaded up into an ambulance and sent to a nearby hospital in Shanghai. The thing is, though, on the way, his heart stopped, and he died by the time he made it to the hospital, leaving Kiuchi in an out-of-body state, watching from above as his now lifeless body was being taken out of the ambulance via stretcher.
Again.
But this wasn't Kiuchi's first rodeo, and after having 33 years at that point to think about what had happened last time he died, he was way more prepared for handling the ins and outs of an out-of-body experience. Naturally, he immediately jumped to the fact that, wait a second, I'm here, I'm seeing this. I'm gonna fucking live. What did I always want to do? Like, he immediately jumped to that.
Yeah.
No longer a rookie, Kiuchi immediately began pursuing answers to the questions he still had from his last trip. And you know what that means, Joey?
He's going to get them answers.
It's time travel time, baby.
Hell yeah. Perfect. Perfect.
I had to make it a soundbite.
I loved it.
Well, Kiuchi's first thought was, quote, "I'll never get another chance. This might be a great opportunity to go to the past and the future, beyond space and time," end quote. And that he did, kind of literally. By that, I mean he may have overshot the future and the past just a little bit by accidentally going into the fifth dimension. Let me explain. On this trip, Kiuchi felt himself full on get launched into what can only be described as a Stargate-like experience where he ended up racing towards and being partially consumed by what he calls the greater universal mind. Buckle up. Shit's about to get trippy.
He skipped the fourth dimension.
Nah, fuck that. Fuck the fourth. I'm going to the fifth.
Going to
baby.
the fifth. Yep.
Now, in this place, which he insists is a place that exists beyond our understanding of existence, there is a large thing, a whirlpool of realities, blending, pulling, spitting, and twisting all moments in history and the experiences of all living things since before and after time itself. There is no now, there is no then, there is just all, capital A, all of all, within the greater universal mind. To picture the feeling of this, imagine for just a moment, you're on the roof of a 100-story building, standing on the ledge, and you close your eyes. The presence of that reality still takes you into a sensation. You can feel the enormity of the moment, the scale of reality between the dimensions of length, width, and height, even with your eyes closed. It's an invisible sensation where you know something massive is right there without actually seeing it. Does that make sense?
Yes. You know if you go forward, you'll die.
Well, to me at least, trying to explain a lot of convoluted explanations that I listened to and read through, it's like, it's a presence of a feeling. And if you haven't messed around with psychedelics too much, this might be a difficult concept for some folks to get. That's totally legit. If you have done psychedelics, I think you might understand this. A lot of times hallucinations with psychedelics are not quite literally visual. They're a strong suggestion that it's visually taking place. The more you do it, the more, at least in my experience, the more that kind of makes sense. It's not, you can snap yourself out of it most times, but it's an incredibly strong suggestion of your senses that something's melting, something's moving, something's forming, something, things of that nature, right? And this experience to me that he kind of explained is like, it's so overwhelming that if you close your eyes, again, walking up to the edge of a building, 100 stories up, you can look down, you can look out, you can look up. It's so overwhelming that when you close your eyes, you still feel the fear of falling forward, the acknowledgement of the distance, the acknowledgement of how far up you are. All of these things, like, they're still present even when you close your eyes. You can't see it, but you know it's there, right? It's this massive feeling, this expanse, right?
I feel like you just awakened one of my worst nightmares in the world, is being on a ledge 100 stories up and closing my eyes.
You're welcome.
Not sleeping tonight.
Welcome to the Black Cat Report. Well, this is the feeling of the greater universal mind, a singular point of all consciousness throughout eternity. And according to Kiuchi, who honestly gonna have to take his word for this one since the man has died so many damn times. Eventually, after some extended period of time, all consciousness will return to it after its afterlife. It is the home of all thought. Now, if that first tab of spiritual acid didn't kick in yet, here's a glass of OJ and another hit. None of this means there is no individual. All beings, all life, all consciousness exists in their own moments and time as individuals, seeking out their own experiences, knowledge, and reality as independent entities for the length of their unique lifetimes. Kiuchi uses computers as a metaphor here, saying the fifth dimension, where the universal mind exists, is basically like one central computer tied into a network of smaller computers. Each has their own functions, operating systems, processors, models, and types, but each feeds information back to the central computer, turning it into a large data warehouse of each computer's knowledge and work. They are at the same time still separate, but still connected.
That makes sense. Do you remember when you talked about the idea that what happens when thoughts, so when we talked a long time ago, when you talked about thoughts, do they ever, like, the energy of your thought? Since energy is neither created nor destroyed, right? It's just there.
Yep.
You know, it's, where does it go? I guess a central network processing hub like the Borg.
Well, in a sense, consciousness and our souls work like self-replicating drones cast out into this three-dimensional universe to independently explore and eventually report back to the fifth dimension. This shit, I have a whole write-up on this somewhere. This shit blew my fucking mind because this, what he's describing, is incredibly similar to a place some of you may have heard about before. The Akashic Records. A place that exists beyond existence, and that, all around the world, for all of recorded history, many famous psychics, fortune tellers, and mystics have described and claimed to have tapped into as the source of their knowledge. Most notably, Edgar Cayce accidentally stumbled across how to access it when he tried meditation in order to get rid of his debilitating headaches. Just gonna pause for thought right there. Well, once Cayce did this, he fell into a non-dimensional trance that eventually led to people asking him questions, generally via his secretary, who would read letters people sent to him. Well, it's been claimed and backed up by literally thousands of cases. He was able to tell people where lost objects were, how to cure incurable diseases and ailments, winning lottery numbers, the exact location of oil and other natural resources on people's lands and parts of the world Cayce had never heard of or visited, and so much more. This was all very well documented and something debunkers still struggle to dismiss to this day. I fucking love Edgar Cayce, whose final resting place, by the way, is about a 5-minute walk from the house we're trying to investigate in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. Shameless plug. Anyways, back to Kiuchi. What'd you say?
Andy predicted his resting place. I will be resting here.
I wouldn't be surprised. Anyways, back to Kiuchi, who, still wanting to explore after experiencing this timeless, ethereal kind of what the fuck did I just tap into sensation, right? He began to think about the future, but specifically, and he learned this at that point, a future based on his own timeline and dimension, which only means one thing, Joey. It's time travel time, baby.
Hell yeah. It is. It really is time travel time.
Now, Kiuchi was standing in a room that was inside of what he would later describe as a futuristic Japanese hospital. He was looking at a patient as they were being scanned and treated with an invisible wavelength system by a strange donut-shaped device.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to give any spoilers, but he claimed he saw this in 2009. And if you want to go down a rabbit hole, you should Google wavelength hospital breakthroughs just in your free time. I would strongly recommend that and look at the articles and the dates of those articles. But almost immediately after seeing this, he was pulled back into his body as doctors and nurses had successfully shocked his heart into beating again and also pumped him full of what's basically an intestinal glue that plugged the hole in his ruptured stomach. Now, I don't know how this man's life could be more of a pure coin toss, but after he was stabilized, he was soon taken to the Chinese Academy of Science for the surgeries he needed in order to survive, which, quoting now from an article, the Chinese Academy is the world's largest research organization comprising around 60,000 researchers working in 114 institutes and has been consistently ranked as the top research organizations around the world, end quote. Basically, 60,000 of the best of the best of the best doctors and scientists in the world were now going to be frantically putting all their skills together to save Kiuchi.
Yeah. Right place, right time.
This is insane. Surviving death 3 times. Like, who does that? Kiuchi does. After being taken to the Chinese Academy of Science, where he was set to undergo emergency surgery. But during the pre-op screening, he experienced a coronary vein rupture, which led to him losing thousands of cc's of blood. This immediately threw his body into shock right before it killed him and left him staring yet again at his body laying on the operating room table while frantic doctors and nurses fought like hell to bring him back to life.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where we'll pick back up next week with Kiuchi's third death and third life.
Wow. You tricked me. You tricked me into a part 3. What an asshole.
I had to, man. I'm sorry.
You tricked me.
There's
way too much.
That's one thing that I will always stand by, and that, Joey, you've always been like super fucking supportive of every time I've gone on these research like rants and quests where I'm like, Joey, I've gone too deep, and you're like, hey man, keep digging in that rabbit hole, it's okay. And I'm like, I've got to go deeper.
Keep going. Always will be supporting that.
There's too much, and honestly, since the last episode came out, while double checking some research I had already done on Kiuchi, I was Googling his name, as one does, and
yes,
we were the 4th search result for him. Whoop, whoop. In English speaking, in America's English speaking, like Google, we were literally the 4th search result, like our first episode. And I was like, there is nothing about this dude in the English speaking world.
Hell yeah.
If a random TikTok video that we made about him became the number 4 search result,
yeah, there's nothing.
And I think we were also the number 9 search result too, which was like a link to like where to listen to an episode or something.
Perfect. We need to be number 1.
But all this added up to just me having an intense, like, I guess like a fear of not covering his story thoroughly. Because at that point, I'm like, we have a fucking responsibility to not just kind of go through and yada yada through shit.
For sure.
Like,
we do.
This story's incredible, and we have the responsibility now, because if anybody in the English-speaking world a year from now, 2 years from now, whenever, comes across this dude and they type in his name, we're going to be the ones that are showing up, and I want to make sure that they have the best foundation possible to jump off of and go farther than we have.
Yeah.
This isn't a story that's just been read and read and read and overread and simplified over and over again ad nauseum. This is new, and that kind of like hit me where I was like, I wasn't even trying to come up that high in search results. Holy fuck. So So we're going to get into it. There's going to be a part 3, which, looking back now, time travel joke there.
You're welcome.
That means 3 episodes for 3 deaths. So,
So
it makes sense. It makes sense.
does.
This next episode, homie does not fucking hesitate to go as far back in time as possible. Holy shit, he gets weird.
He's ready to go.
And we're gonna start that off. We're gonna start that off like jumping straight
With a
into it. No
bang.
bullshit. Yeah. Back to the bang. But yeah.
Didn't even mean that. Well, thank you all for listening and for coming on the live version of this, and for everybody watching and from our Patreon to see the actual live version of our videos with no cutting. So thank you all for listening, and we appreciate it. Copy Kitty, you're the best. Thank you so much. And if you come in and become Patreon supporters, we'll be naming you as well in our videos. So thank you.
For real.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And I feel like there's one more thing you got to play before we go.
It's time travel time, baby.
Hell yeah.
Woo! No, but y'all are the best. We love you. And
Bye.
Bye.
I get it, you died, but why did you possess my body and make me think that you were in a car so that I just ran up on a stranger? Dude, I was trying to prove that time travel was real. No.
You're just like slowly putting your gas in your car, just being like,
Do I put more money in your Like I was only planning on putting a buck in, right?
Can I just pay for my Funyuns?
Bro, what if I crawled inside of you and tricked you and all your friends into seeing me? No, it wasn't like that. I was dead.
I was dead, okay? Like, this doesn't matter.
You always say that. You know what? This is why they all call you Big City Kiuchi. This is why. Coming down here with your big city ideas, you've changed into me. But then back into you, and it's fucking weird.
I don't get it.
We're simple out here. We don't do that.